it's difficult to explain. I think until you've had a horse circling you and moving that close, you can't quite describe what it's like. It's a very large mass.
Hello everyone, my name is Zach and welcome to my channel. I'm here near Windsor with Matt Easton, Scholagladiatoria. Should you say that? Do you need to say that?
I don't need to say that. I'm Matt Easton of Scholagladiatoria, and this is the second part of our video that we'll be doing together.
Yes, so Matt has been telling you all how to kill a cavalryman.
In theory.
In theory. All of the things to think about. So I'm going to talk about, as a cavalryman, what would I be thinking about against someone, against an infantryman. Now, it's worth noting, Matt, I don't think you've ever killed a cavalryman before.
No.
I've never killed an infantryman. So we're working from sources a lot here,
yes,
aren't we?
Yeah. But many different types of sources as well, you know, so not just treatises and these kind of, you know, theoretical works, but also actual combat accounts. I mean, I work a lot, particularly with 19th century stuff, descriptions from things like the Crimean War and the Indy Mutiny and Napoleonic Wars, where they're actually talking about things that did actually happen.
Yeah.
And
they're really useful when we're looking at medieval sources because they tend to be a lot more complete.
Yeah.
A lot of medieval sources assume a certain amount of knowledge from the reader.
Yeah.
So they don't always tell you everything that you need to know.
Although conversely, I would say, you know, for the medieval and Renaissance era, we do have treatises, which sometimes you could argue that some of them are more theoretical, sometimes you might not agree with their advice, but they are more specific about exactly how to do a technique. So the treatise that I work with a lot, Fiore de Liberis, Fiore de Battaglia, actually tells you specifically how to step and how to engage the opponent's lance with your spear on foot so that you can deflect their lance at the same time as letting them run onto the end of your spear and things like this. So you sometimes get the minutiae, the more detailed stuff in the treatises.
And the art is really helpful as well.
Yeah.
I was surprised looking at Fiore's stuff. Actually, he doesn't talk about the gait of the horse so much, so how fast the horse is going. But if you look at the art of it, it's very specific, and you can tell from that how fast the horse is going. And when we tried it, when I tried it with some friends, actually, those gaits are what you need in order to do those techniques.
Yeah, it's very clear that some of the techniques are for when the horse is galloping, running, and some of the techniques, for example, there's wrestling on horseback, where very clearly the horses are basically stood next to each other and the two people are grappling or wrestling on horseback, and you're trying to throw the other person off their horse. And the sword techniques are sort of, they seem to be moving about, but maybe wheeling around each other, so they're not zooming past each other, they are at close sword range and just jockeying for position, really.
Yeah. So something's just gone past, but hopefully you didn't hear too much of that. But anyway, let's go and meet the horse and then we'll get down to it. Hi there everyone, and this is Gary. Gary is the owner of the horses that we're going to be using today. So Gary, who have we got here?
This is Indy, stable name Indy. He's one of our older boys and he comes from Minorca.
Great, and has he done much before in filming or in anything like that?
Hand, yes, he's my old jousting horse.
Excellent.
And he's been in many films as well, major films.
Great.
Yeah.
So if there are any mistakes that happen in the following footage, it's entirely down to me, it's not him.
Exactly.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you very much. Okay, before we start, it's just worth pointing out that everyone here knows what they're doing. We're doing things slowly and carefully. The horse, the rider, the foot combat person, the cameraman, everyone is safe. Please don't do this sort of thing at home. There are places you can go to learn how to do it safely if that is of interest to you. So, point number one, be wary. Now, as a cavalryman, it's very easy to buy into the myth that you are indestructible. You have got a very fast, very powerful animal that is under your control, But that doesn't mean that you are indestructible. And there is a lot said in a lot of different manuals about how a well-trained infantryman can deal with a cavalryman easily, especially an overconfident one. So you need to size up your opponent, try and work out their strengths and weaknesses, and if they seem to be carrying themselves confidently, adjust appropriately. Number 2, know your weapons. So the two kind of weapons that you might use on horseback would be a lance or a spear, so a pole weapon, and then a single-handed weapon, so a sword, or maybe a hammer of some kind, or axe. The sword or axe might be considered a secondary weapon, but that doesn't mean that it is useless. In fact, there are some situations where a sword would be more useful than a lance, and vice versa. So know your weapons and know when to ditch them, because you may not be able to swap as quickly as you would on foot. So know what you're doing with your weapons. Number 3, use your horse when it is appropriate to do so. So some people would say that horses are not going to move over a person. That is completely untrue. Here you can see Matt and Pedro are having to move out of the way of Indy, who I'm just telling to go and run that guy over. Well-trained horses will definitely run over infantry if they are trained to do so. And sometimes that is the best course of action. You know, a horse is a big chunk of meat, and taking one to the face is going to really, really hurt, especially if it's faster than a walk. Here we're doing it as a walk, just to make sure we don't hurt Matt. Number 4, stay mobile. Kind of an addition to the other one. As soon as you stop, you're just a very tall infantryman. Use your horse's speed and strength to stay mobile, and make your opponent have to move as well. You know, your advantage is speed and strength as a cavalryman, so use it. Do not stay still. Do not get bogged down. Otherwise, you'll end up in trouble. Number 5, defend your horse. This seems pretty obvious. Your horse is your advantage. As soon as you lose your horse, you are just an infantryman again. So defend your horse. You can see here, these are ways that you can use a lance to guard your horse against incoming attacks, and you can get a bind on your opponent. So use your lance as a fencing weapon. It is not just an impact weapon. You can use it to fence as well and defend your horse. You can do the same with a sword. Doesn't work so well. Number 6, be aware of your strong and weak quadrants. So as a rider, there are certain areas where you are stronger and weaker, depending on your weapon as well. Now, this is important because you want, obviously, to face your opponent with your strongest side, not allow them to get into your weak areas as well. Here you can see I'm trying to block off Matt, and here I'm turning, so now I'm into a stronger quadrant. So I've turned and changed my horse's lead so that we're in a stronger position for myself. So rear left is the weakest position, rear right is the second weakest position, because obviously once someone's behind you, you're in a bit of trouble. Front left is a reasonably weak position. Front right is the strongest position. Now this changes a little bit with a lance. Front left can be very strong with a lance, and front right maybe slightly weaker. But basically you want to keep your opponent in front of you as much as you can, and if they manage to get behind you, use your horse's speed to disengage and come back. So hopefully you enjoyed that, everyone. I certainly enjoyed it.
Yeah, really interesting for me. Obviously, I don't spend anything like as much time around horses, in fact very little time around horses, unlike Zach. So for me to actually think about some of the things we've been talking about when looking at this topic, actually with a horse moving towards me and moving around me at close range, and me holding weapons and thinking about the possible openings, but also the possible threats to me. And obviously those two things are very closely intertwined. So the things that I covered in my first video, looking at the advice for the infantryman, are inextricably connected to Zach's advice for the cavalryman, because obviously you have to appreciate the strengths of one and the weaknesses of one in order to exploit those as being the other.
Yeah, and if you haven't seen that video, then you can head over to Matt's channel. The link is going to be in the description. And if you've come over here from Matt's channel, thank you for staying till the end. Don't forget to hit like and or subscribe before you leave. And we would love to do something like this again.
Oh, I think we
would.
definitely will, yeah.
So if you've got any questions or comments or things that you'd like us to touch on in that video, then please do leave them below, and we'll do some more of this.
Yeah, questions and suggestions for future videos, always welcome.
Thanks guys, see you soon.
Cheers.
Bye.